Doctor, please, be gentle. My baby. That really hurts. I feel dizzy. The racist doctor and the prayer that saved a baby. A story of injustice, faith, and unshakable dignity. In a city where white coats are respected and trusted, not every heart beneath them beats with compassion. It was a warm Tuesday afternoon. The sky was clear, but inside the city's biggest hospital, something was about to happen, something far more serious than a medical emergency. A young African woman named Naomi stepped into the hospital's main hallway. Pregnant, hopeful, tired, and black. She walked in with her medical file in hand, but what she didn't know was that she was walking into a system that still judged patients not by their condition, but by their color. Naomi didn't come from money. She didn't wear designer shoes, but she carried something far more precious, a life inside her. And like every mother, all she wanted was for her child to arrive safely in peace and in dignity. But in that hospital there was a doctor, a man highly educated, deeply skilled, and quietly racist. A man whose words could cut deeper than any scalpel. This story isn't just about Naomi. It's about every woman who's been looked down on because of where she comes from, how she dresses, the language she speaks, or the color of her skin. It's about bias hidden in professionalism and prejudice disguised as policy. But most of all, it's about how God sees what men ignore. Because when man rejects you, heaven responds. Stay with us, because in this story, God didn't just protect a woman, He defended a womb. He didn't just expose a doctor, He revealed a deliverer. And what began as humiliation ended in divine vindication. This is the story of the color of care, when heaven defended her womb. Subscribe now to African Gospel Tales, and let the story begin. What happens when the people meant to heal become the ones that wound? When those called to protect life despise the very skin it's wrapped in? But what if I told you no one can curse what God has blessed? This is the true tale of pain, prejudice, and divine protection. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to African Gospel Tales, because some stories are not just for listening, they are for learning. The problem was never her blood pressure. It was the pressure of being judged. It was just past 10 a.m. when Naomi stepped through the glass doors of Victoria City General Hospital. The doors slid open with a soft mechanical hiss, but inside, nothing felt soft. The air was cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the stairs that followed her like shadows. She walked with careful grace, one hand balancing her belly, the other clutching a weathered manila folder, her antenatal file. Inside it were months of careful scans, handwritten notes, and prescriptions she had struggled to afford. Her dress was clean but simple, a faded blue wrapper with golden prints. Her sandals were worn, and her bag had a torn seam. Yet Naomi stood tall. She wasn't there for approval. She was there for her child. Sound suggestion for background, hospital murmurs, distant announcements, subtle ticking clock. She looked around the reception area. Plastic chairs lined the walls like waiting sentries. A young couple whispered excitedly in one corner. A nurse with a clipboard barely looked up as Naomi approached. "Name?" the nurse asked flatly. "Naomi Mwangi." The nurse frowned. "You're late. Take a seat. Wait for your name. The doctor will call you. Eventually." Naomi nodded silently and sat. Her back hurt, and her ankles were swollen, but she didn't complain. She hummed softly to herself, a Swahili worship song she had learned from her mother. Her eyes wandered across the pale cream walls. A framed quote above the reception desk read, "We care for all with dignity." She smiled faintly. If only the air in the room matched those words. Just then, a man in a white coat stepped into the hallway. His shoes clicked sharply on the tiles, his expression as rigid as the stethoscope around his neck. This was Dr. Cornelius Wessels, a senior obstetrician known more for efficiency than empathy. He scanned the seated patients with narrow, impatient eyes, flipping through his clipboard. His voice rang out loud and clipped. "Naomi Mwangi?" Naomi stood slowly, steadying herself. He glanced at her once, then twice, as if her presence confirmed something offensive. You? You're Naomi? Yes, sir, she said gently. He scoffed. I expected... Never mind. Follow me, and next time don't bring the whole village when you come. The words hit like slaps. Naomi looked around. People were watching. A few chuckled. A nurse smirked and looked away. Naomi's throat tightened, but she said nothing. Sorry, sir, I came alone. Then walk faster, he snapped. Unless you need a drumbeat to pick up the pace. Naomi both is one of a share of now word. Sound suggestion, subtle silence as tension grows. Naomi white too. Naomi followed him down the hallway, her head slightly bowed, her fingers tightening around her file. But inside, something else was rising. Not anger. Not fear. But a quiet awareness. This man sees my color, but he doesn't see my creator. She whispered a short prayer beneath her breath. Lord, go before me. My child is yours before she is mine. Let no hand touch me unless you allow it. Naomi Wyatt C. maybe reached the examination room. The door closed behind her with a hollow sound. The world shrank into 4 cold walls and 1 cold man. She climbed onto the bed slowly, obediently, still without complaint. And so began the appointment that would change everything. The room was sterile, clean, cold. Not just in temperature, but in atmosphere. There were no flowers, no warm posters about motherhood. Just gray walls, metal instruments, and the faint hum of a ceiling fan. Dr. Cornelius didn't greet Naomi. He didn't ask how she was feeling. Instead, he wore the look of a man about to fix a broken appliance, not care for a living, breathing woman. He put on his gloves slowly, not looking at her. Lie back. Lift your dress. Let's get this over with. Naomi obeyed. She lay down on the stiff examination bed, the paper lining crinkling under her weight. Her belly rose like a small hill of promise, round, sacred, alive. The doctor pressed his hand down on it, hard. Naomi flinched. You're too soft, he muttered. How many pregnancies is this? 2nd? 3rd? 5th? 1st, Naomi replied, her voice small. You people always say that, he sneered. You all think childbirth is a community project. He smeared cold gel across her stomach and started the ultrasound machine. The monitor flickered to life. For a moment, Naomi turned her head to look at it, her baby curled up like a prayer inside her. But the doctor wasn't interested in beauty. He was in a hurry. He jabbed the probe down again, too harsh. Naomi winced. Her stomach tightened. So did the monitor's rhythm. The screen blinked. The baby's heartbeat dropped. Beep, beep, beep. The doctor noticed, but said nothing. You women are always so dramatic, he muttered, setting down the probe. If I had a coin for every sob story I heard, I'd retire early. Naomi's eyes filled with tears, not from pain alone, but from how invisible she felt. Please, I feel dizzy, she whispered. That's normal, he said, removing his gloves. You'll survive, the baby's fine, probably. Naomi sat up slowly, placing both hands over her belly protectively. She felt something wasn't right, not just emotionally, but physically. A cramp, a tightening, a strange shift in her womb. And yet this man didn't care. She wanted to scream, to leave, to run, but instead she prayed. Lord, shield this child, not just from sickness, but from the pride of men. I did not come for him, I came for you. Intervene. Please, intervene. Door opens. Divine timing. At that moment, the door creaked open. Enter Dr. Amara Nkube, a 27-year-old intern doctor, newly assigned to maternity care. Her skin was like Naomi's. Her accent bore the rhythm of home. Her spirit carried both intelligence and kindness. She walked in with a smile until she saw Naomi's pale face. Dr. Wessels, she said politely, is everything okay here? Just a routine check. She's being overly sensitive, he replied, already reaching for his notes. But Dr. Amara glanced at the monitor. Her eyes widened. The baby's heartbeat was irregular. She's in distress, Amara said urgently. Look, her vitals are dropping. There's a possible placental issue. She'll be fine, Dr. Cornelia shrugged. Send her home with iron tablets if she wants a souvenir. No, doctor, this is not just iron deficiency. I'm calling for a review. We may need an emergency scan or an intervention. Dr. Amara ignored the senior's scoff and pressed the emergency button. 2 nurses rushed in. Naomi was gently helped back onto the bed. Ma'am, don't worry, Amara whispered. You're not alone. We've got you now. Naomi's eyes welled with tears, not from fear anymore, but from being seen, heard, respected. Voiceover reflection. Sometimes the greatest miracles are not in the lightning, but in the people God sends quietly into our storms. As Naomi was wheeled out of the examination room, the monitor now blaring alerts, Dr. Wessels stood frozen, unmoved, unapologetic. But God had already taken over the scene, because no bias, no degree, no arrogance can override the hand of a praying mother and a listening God. The corridors of Victoria City General bustled with urgency as Naomi was wheeled toward the maternity emergency unit. Her hands trembled on her belly, her breath shallow, but her lips still whispering a prayer. Jehovah Shammah, the God who is present, be here now. Inside the emergency unit, a flurry of action unfolded. Monitors were hooked up, gloves snapped into place, nurses moved like clockwork. And at the center of it all was Dr. Amara, no longer an intern, but a lioness cloaked in wisdom and divine timing. She took charge. Naomi, I need you to breathe slowly, all right? You're going to be okay. Your baby is going to be okay. Just trust me. Naomi's eyes met hers. I trust God, and He sent you. That moment, those words lit something in the young doctor. She nodded, fighting hears. Sometimes God doesn't shout. He whispers through the presence of people. He doesn't always send angels in white robes. Sometimes He sends them in scrubs with name tags. Suddenly, the monitor beeped erratically. The baby's heartbeat was dropping again. The placenta had partially detached. Every second counted. A senior consultant rushed in. They reviewed the scans. A decision was made in seconds. Emergency cesarean, now! The surgical team flew into action. Naomi was prepped, face weak, drowsy, slipping between consciousness and prayer. Imela, that's your name, she whispered to her unborn child. You will live and not die. In the operating room, the lights above were blinding. The air smelled of antiseptic. But over the chaos, a strange peace rested on Naomi's face. She had released control. The surgeons worked. Dr. Amara remained in the room, holding Naomi's hand, even though protocol said she didn't have to. Then, after what felt like eternity, a cry pierced the room. A sharp, beautiful cry. It's a girl, the nurse said. Strong heartbeat, fully formed. She's perfect. Sound baby crying gently. Music swells softly. Naomi wept. Tears ran down her cheeks as the nurse brought the baby close. You did it, Amara whispered. No, Naomi replied through trembling lips. God did it. You only helped Him finish the story. They wrapped the baby in a soft cloth, placed her in Naomi's arms. Her skin deep and rich like her mother's, her fists clenched in victory. She had survived what should have taken her, because God had decided this womb would not be silenced. Isaiah 46:4. Even to your old age and gray hairs I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you. And in that moment, God carried Naomi. Not because of who she was in the world, but because of who she was to Him. Dr. Cornelia stood by the window, watching the surgical team through the glass. He said nothing, did nothing, but for the first time, he looked uncertain. He had almost cost a life, because of bias. And though no one rebuked him publicly, God had already judged his spirit silently. You don't need to raise your voice when heaven has already raised a standard. Naomi didn't shout, she didn't curse, she simply trusted, and heaven responded with fire, with mercy, and with a cry of life. As Naomi rested in recovery, her baby next to her, Amara walked in again, holding a tiny ID bracelet with the baby's name. Do you have a name for her? Amara asked. Naomi smiled. Yes, Imela. It means thank you. Because even if the world didn't value her, God did. And I want the world to know I survived. She survived. Because when God defends your womb, no man can destroy your destiny. Justice is not always thunder. Sometimes it's a quiet voice saying, I forgive you, but let truth be told. 2 weeks had passed. Naomi had returned home with baby Imela, whose name had now become a song on the lips of her family and neighbors. People came just to see her, to hold her, not because she was the most beautiful baby in the world, though to Naomi she was, but because her birth had become a testimony, a reminder that he who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. But while Naomi held her daughter in love, storm clouds were gathering at the hospital. Inside Victoria City General Hospital, complaint had stacked up against Dr. Cornelius Wessels. Naomi's wasn't the first, but it was the one that made the board pay attention, because it came with proof of neglect, a near-fatal error, and a divine rescue that couldn't be ignored. The hospital's ethics committee summoned him, and they summoned Naomi too. The room was bright, polished, and full of silence. 5 hospital administrators sat at a long table. At one end sat Dr. Wessels, still proud, though visibly tense. Across from him sat Naomi, dressed not in designer clothes, but in truth, dignity, and courage. Baby Imela slept in a sling around her chest, her tiny hand curled against her mother's heartbeat. Dr. Amara was present too, quietly watching as Naomi's silent guardian. Mrs. Naomi Mwangi, the board chairman began, thank you for coming. We understand your time with us was difficult. We've reviewed the file, we've read your complaint, but we need to hear, what exactly do you want from this hearing? Naomi stood. She didn't read from a paper. She didn't stutter. She simply spoke from her heart. I was looked down on because of my appearance, because of where I come from. I was spoken to like I was nothing. I was mishandled physically and almost lost my child. But I came here today, not to seek revenge, but to remind this hospital of its promise. She pointed gently to a framed plaque on the wall. Quality health care for all, with dignity. You failed me, but God didn't. This baby, my Imela, should not be alive. But she is, because God placed someone, Dr. Amara, at the right time in the right place. So no, I don't want money. I don't want media drama. I want this hospital to remember, your patients are not projects. They are people, and their lives matter, whether they walk in with sandals or stilettos. One board member wipes a tear, another lowers his head. Then, Naomi does something unexpected. She turns to Dr. Cornelius Wessels. He can barely look her in the eye. Doctor, she says calmly, I forgive you. He lifts his eyes, shocked. But I pray you change, not just how you treat black patients, but how you see them, because no amount of degrees can heal a prideful heart, but God can. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is wisdom. It does not excuse wrong, but it releases the wounded. The hospital suspended Dr. Wessels for 6 months and ordered mandatory cultural and ethical retraining. His name was removed from several oversight committees, but most of all, his pride was broken in silence. Dr. Amara was promoted from intern to full-time junior doctor, with the board commending her bravery and compassion. And Naomi? She walked out of the hospital with her baby in her arms, her head high, and her story now told, not just in whispers, but in walls that once watched her be ignored. Micah 6:8, what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Naomi had acted justly. She had shown mercy, and she had walked humbly, with God holding her hand through it all. Lessons. Racism in professionalism. Highlighted subtly through the doctor's dialogue and indifference, racism may delay you, but it cannot destroy you when God is your advocate. Dr. Cornelius's attitude did not stop Naomi's destiny. The sacredness of motherhood. Through Naomi's quiet strength and connection to her unborn child. God's intervention through people, Dr. Amara as an angel in scrubs. Prayer as power, Naomi didn't react, she reached out in the spirit. Faith under pressure. Even without support, Naomi stood in her identity. God is never late. Even in the final hour, he sends people who act as vessels of deliverance. There's power in surrender. Naomi didn't panic, she prayed. She handed the situation to God. Never underestimate the role of a compassionate person. Amara wasn't the head doctor, but she was the right doctor. Every child is born with a name in heaven before they ever cry on earth. Conclusion. She came in for a checkup, but left with a calling, to be a voice for the unseen, a reminder that no skin is too dark for dignity, and no womb is too small to carry a miracle. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to African Gospel Tales today. Share this with someone who needs hope, healing, and truth. And remember, when the world rejects you, God still receives you.